Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn could well be resurrected as soon as September without Conor Benn going in front of the Boxing Board of Control to prove his innocence. And if that happens, where would it leave the sport of boxing? On the prospect of Eubank Jr. facing Benn, this was promoter Eddie Hearn on that topic.
I mean, he's pretty much agreed, really. I mean, it's not done because we haven't signed contracts, but we're just really, it's more about the location. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. Look, we want to do this fight in the UK, but we won't know that for a couple of weeks. So it's not going to be a problem making the fight because there's a lot of money in the fight. But it's just a case of where that fight will take place. I mean, again, I'm not involved in the process with the legal team in UKAD. I hope it can take place in the UK. You're looking at September for that fight.
You're looking at September for that fight. That was Eddie Hearn speaking to IFL
Isn't
TV.
that commendable?
Well, let's get into this. talkSPORT's fight pundit and top writer with the Telegraph, Gareth A. Davies, joins us. Gareth, what is your take on what Hearn has just said?
Well, it's great to join you three hangry men on this lunchtime as well.
Thank you, Gareth.
James, Simon, Martin, hello. My take is that clearly that he went before the board, well, his case went before the board with UKAD in mid-March. So they're looking at, I think, September the 23rd as potentially Abu Dhabi or the UK. They're obviously believing that they're going to get a favourable hearing and that he's going to get some extraordinary resolution from UKAD in the tribunal and get a 6-month ban, because that's how the timeline works, because it will be backdated from March the 15th or mid-March. I think it's 14th of March when that case eventually went in front of him. I think Simon said this, I said it myself, that he wasted 6 months. He should have gone on it straight away last October. But I think, Hearn is pushing the case. He's pushing the hand of UKAD and the Boxing Board of Control to make a decision in the next couple of weeks. And I think if they resolve that he gets a 2-year ban, then they'll go to Abu Dhabi, and we've got a very controversial fight on our hands. I think it's a controversial event anyway, unless we get this resolution that he is allowed to fight in the UK. They favour the UK, clearly. Abu Dhabi works because it's the same market in terms of time. The pay-per-view big. It's a bigger fight than it ever was. But there's something, I don't know, a little bit uncomfortable about all of this, because I think they've pushed ahead, and I know Simon has the same view, they've pushed ahead before they've really got the resolution on the hearing, even though, as Eddie said, they haven't signed the fight yet.
Well, this is it. I mean, just in the passing, everybody, Brendan Rodgers is announced he has joined Celtic as the new head coach for a second time. It's a 3-year deal. We'll get back to that. Simon, where do you stand with this?
These are the same people that had the audacity to criticise us for having Chris Eubank Sr. in a studio, that are advocating that his son goes and fights in Abu Dhabi, which will subsequently come with a consequence if Conor Benn isn't cleared. And it's difficult to see at this moment in time how Conor Benn gets around strict liability, which is the obligation upon the athlete to provide an absolutely cast-iron, copper-bottom reason as to the reasons why he's got a banned substance in his body. If he can find some argument for it, he goes down from a 4-year ban to a 2-year ban. It's very difficult to see how he'll get around that. But if he does, it becomes a non-argument. At this moment in time, if he doesn't, and Hearn and his cohorts put him on in the Middle East, then Eubank Jr. is not going to get the British Boxing Board of Control's permission, which means he's then going to have his licence stripped by the British Boxing Board of Control. Well done, Eddie. What a wonderful way to behave, and what a blueprint for how blue chip promoters should advocate for their fighters. And maybe this might explain why the people like Chris Eubank Sr. have some of the attitude about the people that he's got around him in his ear, making decisions for him.
Gareth, should this not be first and foremost about the integrity of boxing and about clearing up its good name before you even attempt to talk about another fight between these two boxers?
Absolutely right. Well, Simon's just raised the point I was about to make next, which is if we wait for the hearing, if we wait for the resolution, and if they do press on with it, then they are throwing the entire drug testing system for boxing, an inherently dangerous sport, under the bus. And they're jeopardising Chris Eubank Jr. because he's fighting a guy who, if they do find that they uphold the fact that they don't believe he inadvertently had the substance in his system. They're allowing it to go ahead. Chris Eubank Jr. Obviously wants to fight Ben. It's a massive money fight for him. I think exactly right, Simon. I think what Chris Eubank Sr. was saying last week on your show, which was very deep and very moving, and it was a father calling out to his son, I think, to reunite with him in many ways. And Chris isn't in the country at the moment. It throws the testing system under the bus, and it's a much bigger story in many ways for boxing than just two guys having a fight. It is wrong in lots of ways.
These promoters should get sanctioned, Gareth.
Yeah.
Well, they should get sanctioned for this.
We've spoken about this on air. I think we spoke about this. I can't remember which show it was, but I definitely came and spoke with you both about it, with you, Jim, and you, Simon, on a day when we talked about there should be an agreement, cross commissions globally, because there's no governing body, that if someone's banned in one territory, they shouldn't just be able to,
That's right.
I can just go somewhere else and
But I think there is a tacit understanding amongst most of the commissions that's the case. What they're going to do is they're going to make the Middle Eastern guys the outliers. Well done.
And weirdly, ironically, Robert Smith and the Boxing Board of Control have actually been hands-on in helping the Middle East to set up their commissions and how to run them. So, we go back to the Wild West here, and unfortunately, it's all about money again. As I said, it's a bigger fight now. He's not going to serve a 2-year ban by the look of it. So it's going to throw another black eye for boxing, another another body shot for boxing. It's going to be a big fight and a very, very controversial fight. And I'm hearing it'll be at 160 as well.
But isn't it, Gareth, anybody that lines up to spar with him, anybody that lines up to train him, can be also caught in that same trap of having their licensing stripped away.
Yeah, and also, I wonder what action the board ought to or will take against Eddie Hearn.
That's my point.
Going against all the principles that need to be upheld to make it as safe a sport as we can make it in what is an inherently dangerous sport. You can be legally killed in the ring
because the promoters are licensed by the British Boxing Board of Control, right? And I had to listen to that outrageous pack of rubbish from Eddie Hearn about his inability to have pulled Conor Benn out of that fight on the basis of a failed drug test, because ultimately they didn't have a clause to be able to do it, and I think that's preposterous nonsense, because anybody would have a clause that can get you out of a fight if the game is being brought into disrepute, irrespective of the sport. Now we're listening to a promoter, and I've got no problem with Eddie besides people's perception that I have, because I called him a coward once upon a time because he wouldn't face up to the media post this situation, and that's all my relationship with Eddie is about, and that in that particular area. But now we've got a promoter suggesting to the British Boxing Board of Control, irrespective of what you're going to do, and I'm a licence holder as a promoter, I don't care. I'm just going to take this fighter. I'm going to ignore your bans. I'm going to ignore your jurisdiction. I'm going to ignore the testing regimes. I'm going to compromise other fighters' careers by enticing them with enormous wealth to be able to get as a result of this fight. And I'm going to take them into the Middle East. And I'm going to get away with it.
It's a scandal.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.